there, students. Thanks for joining me for another installment of U.S. Government and Politics. And in today's lesson, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about party identification. I've got a couple of objectives here. First of all, in what ways do people identify with political parties? And second, what factors influence party preference? Now, if we were to simplify it, we see that we have Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. We've got three groups of people. And of those three groups of people, the largest group would be Independents. You have about 30% Democrats, 25% Republicans, whereabouts, it fluctuates. And keep in mind, a few more Democrats than Republicans in this country. And then about 45% as independent. Well, you might think, how do we maintain a two-party system in this country if half of America nearly doesn't claim a party? Well, the answer is that it's not that simple. That, when people are asked the first time, a lot of times they don't necessarily want to identify with a party, but keep in mind that there are other ways to express your preference for a party and to identify with a party other than being a part of it officially. Voter registration. This would be the most obvious way that someone says, I am a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, or I'm an independent. But besides that, you can self-identify. There are some states like South Carolina where you don't register as a Democrat or Republican, that you self-identify or you choose to support the party in other ways. So a tendency to support the party. Now, there are two ways that I can support a political party. I might support their candidates by and large, or I might support their policies. And then finally, another expression of party preference would be to vote in primary elections. Once again, South Carolina is a state that has an open primary system. Several other states have open primaries, and you don't register to be a part of a particular party, and you go to the polls and you say, I would like to vote in the Democratic primary, or I would like to vote in the Republican primary. People who don't identify with parties at all may be less likely to vote in a primary election and may just vote in the general election. But if you choose to vote in the Democratic or the Republican primary, then you are identifying with that party, whether you have registered or not, or whether you self-identify as that party. And when it counts, the best way to look at this is when we have a presidential election. Although 45% of Americans try to identify as independent, we see that in 2012, 98.3% voted for one of the two major party candidates in the 2012 election. And a lot of Americans were looking at ballots that had 5 or 6 different candidates on there, but 98.3% are voting for the Democrat or the Republican. So only 1.7% of Americans in 2012, that's less than 1 out of 50, did not in some way support and validate our two-party system, that they chose to identify either with the Democratic Party and its candidate or the Republican Party and its candidate. And that is because of a phenomenon that we know as leaners, all right? These are people who don't necessarily identify as part of a political party, but you put a gun to their head and they say, okay, well, I tend to identify more with Republicans or more with Democrats, but I'm reluctant to put that label on myself. But very few people are truly independent. Nearly everyone is a leaner. Some independents lean left, some independents lean right. And depending on how you lean, that is going to affect your party preference. So this is why 98.3% of voters in the 2012 election chose a party when it came crunch time, that when they are given an either or you can choose from these other third-party candidates, then they picked, because we have a lot of leaners in this country. Only about 10 to 15% of people will claim that they don't even lean toward another party. But then again, I mean, you've got these numbers here where it is a very small part of the electorate that won't choose a political party when it's all said and done. So once again, just to review, expressions of party preference, that can be through voter registration, self-identification, tendency to support the party's candidates or policies, or by voting in primary elections. So then we see a more complex version emerge here, to where when we look at Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, really each party has strong and weak voters. A strong Democrat or a strong Republican, this is your party line voter. Okay, so if somebody votes strong Democrat, then they are going to support the Democratic Party all the time or nearly all the time. Same thing for a Republican. Now, when you get into the weak category, these are people that they still identify with that party, but they may not support the candidates as reliably. So this is somebody that might say, I'm a Democrat, but sometimes I support Republicans, or I vote for one party locally and one party nationally, but I tend to see myself as this. West Virginia is an example of a state that has a very vibrant Democratic Party, but Republicans always win national elections there. So there are states like that where you have a two-party system within the state, but one party dominates with national elections. And then we have the leaners, that most of your independents either lean Republican or they lean Democratic. They are going to lean toward one party or the other. And then you've got a very small percentage of the electorate that make up your true independents. But then again, when it comes time, even they are going to tend to support one party or the other. And let's look briefly at factors influencing party identification. First of all, your upbringing, your political socialization, that is very, very important. Second of all, your life experience is going to determine whether you maintain the beliefs of your upbringing. Then the level of attachment. How attached have you gotten to that party over time? And four, the political climate can influence party ID. So first of all, let's talk about upbringing, political socialization. About 70% of people, if they have parents that both identify with the same party, so they're either both Democrats, both Republicans, or both independent, about a 70% chance that that child, upon reaching adulthood, will identify with that party. So your parents have a big influence over you, whether you like it or not, over your political beliefs. Now, once you get out in the world, those beliefs may or may not be confirmed by experience. So your parents may have raised you one way, and you get out into the world and you see something different. Maybe you grew up in a rural area and you moved to a city. Maybe your parents were very socially conservative, but when you move to this bigger city, you become more socially liberal or something like that. Depending on what profession you go into, a lot of times that matters. So your life experience may or may not validate that political upbringing, but still that upbringing is very, very powerful. But of course, we do have the 30% who, for some reason or another, reject their parents' political beliefs, and that is because of someone's life experience. And keep in mind also that we become more attached to our political beliefs with time. That somebody who is younger is more likely to switch party ID than somebody who is older. So, for example, when someone is 20 years old and they get to be 30, they may have a different political belief, but that's much more likely to happen than for somebody to change their party ID between the ages of 60 and 70 or something like that. And the final factor that could influence is the political climate and something we might refer to as realignment. Especially my parents' generation here in the South, that when they were growing up, the Democratic Party was very dominant. And now that they're grown up, and currently in most southern states, the Republican Party is dominant, in the sense that in a lot of cases that you have really a one-party system. In South Carolina, all of our statewide elected officers and senators are Republicans. So that makes a difference. If everybody else is switching, if the political climate's changing, that may happen. There are lately a lot of older voters that are identifying more with the Republican Party, whereas the elderly used to identify with the Democratic Party. So that can happen, just the general political climate and what other people are doing, because keep in mind, the parties are changing. A lot of times when somebody switches parties, especially a politician, they'll say that I didn't leave the such and such party, the such and such party left me. Well, I hope you found all of that helpful. Hopefully you'll subscribe to my channel. Website, tomrichey.net, also at tomrichey on Twitter and Instagram. Hopefully you'll comment on the video, like or dislike. Tell me what you think. Is there any other topic that you'd like me to tackle in government, politics, history, whatever? Let me know. Let's interact. I'll be back soon. Till next time.